to Twitch Presents and this Doctor Who marathon. So we've just seen the entirety of the first Doctor.
Yeah.
And now we're moving into Doctor 2. Who have we got to help us through figuring out all about this second incarnation?
So, joining us today, we have Billy Garrett-John from the Review of Death, Tom Spilsbury, former editor for Doctor Who magazine. The story so far with the Doctor, he's just encountered the Cybermen for the first time.
Yeah.
They've been defeated, but during that adventure, his body has become very...
No?
No, his
Okay.
body's become very worn down, and he goes into the TARDIS, his companions follow him, he collapses to the floor, and his face begins to glow, and all of a sudden, he is replaced with a new man in an entirely different costume.
Perfect.
And that is Patrick Troughton. That is the
Let's have a
introduction to the second Doctor.
Oh, wow.
And this is a still from his first story, you know, as he's got up from the floor, almost.
And are we now in colour?
No, it's still in black and white. This is one of a few...
behind-the-scenes
Yeah.
picture. So what's he holding there? Is that it looks like a Bible and a blowpipe.
So that is his 500-year diary.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
so he's 500 years old at this point.
He does say in Tomb of the Cybermen about 450.
Yeah.
So obviously, you know, if you're going to have a 500-year diary,
Still got a bit
he's got like, you know, a bit at the back left.
And the diary is referred to more so in Troughton's era than I think in any other era, really, because he uses it to find the Cybermat.
It comes back. It comes back in the Capaldi era. He has.
Oh, really?
I think it might be 900-year diary by that point.
The
McGann film has.
The
it as
McGann
well.
film has a 900-year diary, presumably because he's filled up the 500.
Yeah.
So he thinks, I need a bigger diary now.
Yeah.
He's gone to the Gallifrey equivalent of W.H. Smith to pick up a new one.
And that's a comically large pencil, I see then.
No, that's a recorder.
Oh, that's a recorder?
Yeah, that was his little gimmick, was that he played the recorder.
The most annoying instrument in the world.
Well, that was the thing, particularly in his first story, he plays it quite a lot, and he doesn't talk to his companions for parts of it, and it really gets on their nerves.
Yeah, good.
He just toots, doesn't he, rather than answers their questions. So they say, Doctor, shouldn't we get out of this cell? Yeah, could you just answer the question, please?
Yeah.
But it's not a sonic recorder, it doesn't do anything,
no,
it's just a
It
straight
would have
up...
been nowadays.
It probably would have been. Interesting to note is that at this point, he hasn't regenerated, he's been renewed. The term regeneration doesn't come into it until John Pertwee takes over.
The haircut
is...
I'm not feeling it.
Not feeling it?
Very
Okay.
neatly. In fact, there's an oft-told anecdote that Annika Wills, who played Polly, his first companion, or one of his first companions, just kind of messed his hair around and said, why don't you do it like that? And the beetle mop kind of stayed where it was.
Far removed from the austere-looking First Doctor, and he plays it incredibly differently. You know, whereas the First Doctor, you know, although he had that twinkle in his eye, he was quite authoritative. The Second Doctor, he is a bit reserved, whereas the First Doctor...
gung-ho.
He's not as gung-ho,
that's probably the best
He's
way
a
to
bit
say it.
more tentative about things. But again, that is something that sort of sits on the surface, because we have these nice moments where actually he will face off against something, or he will talk about the injustices or the evils of the universe.
He's the Doctor, really, where you see the element of, I'm going to play an idiot to lull my enemy into a false sense of security, and then flip the switch and, actually, I had you all along. Really, you know, Patrick had the hardest time of all, being the first new Doctor Who. And a lot of people call back to Pat's portrayal. Matt Smith absolutely adores his, you know, the way what Troughton did with it. And you see a lot of callbacks to people referring to Pat's portrayal. And I think it's the first time you see some form of fragility in the Doctors. You know, this you're saying, oh my word. You know, the first Doctor would have just rubbed his lapels at a monster and it would have run off. But there is a bit more of a kind of, you know, he's shocked by the things he's seeing, and he's a bit more surprised, you know, along with his companions.
On the right-hand side, we have Jamie McCrimmon, who is a Highlander from Scotland.
Battle of Culloden, isn't it?
Okay, the Battle of Culloden.
Fighting the Redcoats. He's a bit like Katarina, but he's so many centuries ahead that it sort of works for him, because although he doesn't know things like electricity and stuff like that, it's played off in such a way that it's sort of quickly explained, and then, or not even that, he just sort of picks it up.
slowly pick stuff up, and certainly later on he refers to stuff he's seen, and he's starting to pick up the vernacular of, kind of being travelling through time and space. Most of the time he'll just refer to things being, oh, that's a big one, Doctor, or whatever.
Yeah, that's a beastie. Or,
yeah, that's a big beastie.
Just super Scottish. I
He
like
is
that.
super Scottish, yeah. He wears a kilt. You know,
Oh, really?
He's got
Oh,
a dagger and everything. Yeah.
I mean, I think also it's worth saying, because Jamie lasts for, apart from Patrick Troughton's first story, Jamie isn't all of the
all of
other
the
stories.
all Pat
And
stories.
he's just got a brilliant rapport with Troughton.
Yeah.
They very much are a comedy double act.
They absolutely
almost,
fit
you
off
know,
each other.
so-
They're brilliant together.
Yeah, they are a perfect TARDIS team. And they're joined by Victoria on the left-hand side here. She is from the Victorian era. Her father is...
Of course she is.
Yeah, her father is exterminated by the Daleks.
Oh, wow.
Her mum's already dead when we meet her. Again, the Doctor picks up a lot of orphans.
Yeah, well, people who have, it makes sense. He's not taking people away from people who need them.
No.
He's taking people who need him.
Yeah. I guess, unfortunately, she is considered one of the more screamy companions. But in some cases, it actually works in her favour because she defeats one of the Doctor's enemies entirely by screaming in Fury from the Deep.
Defeats some seaweed by screaming at it. The lovely thing when Victoria's there is that Jamie and the Doctor, they're quite protective of her. And even though of course Victoria's from a later period than Jamie is, again it's sort of like almost like he's like a big brother kind of thing, or maybe they sort of treat her a bit like their little sister in a way. But I think it's a very kind of endearing partnership, or the three of them together. It's a beautiful scene from the start of the Tomb of the Cybermen where they're welcoming Victoria into their world, and she's sort of looking around at this place, and what is this? And this is the TARDIS. It's my home, and it's quite a gentle opening to a story. Yeah. But it's again,
it's stepping on point for a new.
It is. It was the sort of start of a new season.
Yeah. It almost seems like a scene that should have gone at the end of the previous story. In a way, like this is okay. Now they're off on their adventures, and then we go straight to Telos, and it all kicks off from there. And there's some really lovely scenes in that first story with, nobody on Earth is doing what we're doing.
You probably can't remember your family.
Oh, yes, I can when I want to. And that's the point, really. I have to really want to bring them back in front of my eyes. The rest of the time, they sleep in my mind. Our lives are different to anybody else's. That's the exciting thing. Nobody in the universe can do what we're doing.
She is replaced with Zoe Herriot.
Wow.
She comes from the far future. She is quite a foil for the Doctor in a way because at times she seems like she's a bit more on the ball than he is.
Compared to Victoria, who obviously was from a more primitive time, she's a real brain box and a bit of a know-it-all, and she even at one point sort of saying, "Oh, the Doctor's almost as intelligent as I am."
Yeah.
So she's kind of
arrogant, or is she?
Well, I bet it's only the sort of arrogance that the Doctor himself might show. But
and I think she kind of does it almost to show him up a little. Sometimes.
And she's a little bit sort of scolding of Jamie at times.
I was going to say, there's gentle ribbing between sort of her and Jamie.
But it's interesting because it does change that dynamic again, where you still got the second Doctor and Jamie, but with Zoe there, it's less like a little sister that they're looking after, and more like a little sister that's now bossing them around.
Absolutely, which is really nice, and it does really flip the dynamic. Jamie can't be patting her on the head. Yeah, she's a really good foil for the pair of them, and it's a really nice pairing all the way through to the end of Patrick's run on the show.
Yeah, so she stays here right until the end, and it is one of the most tear-jerking endings to a TARDIS team when she and Jamie leave.
A warning to everyone.
Yeah. So that does exist, so you can see the final moments of Zoe and Jamie.
In a big 10-part epic, which it finishes the whole of the, not just the second Doctor's era, but the whole black and white 1960s era altogether.
And
it's poignant. It's also remarkable for another couple of reasons, because it's the first proper answer to the question Doctor Who in a way. We find out exactly where he's from, which they've always been a bit coy about before. We know he's from somewhere else, space, another civilization, I think he sort of says, but it's never quite clear what that is. And then we finally, at the end of this whole period, we get some answers.
We finally meet other Time Lords for the first time.
So the Brigadier, who will become a major part of the John Pertwee era, makes his first appearance here. At first he's a colonel fighting the Yeti, which we'll get to in a bit.
So he's called the Colonel at this point.
So he is Colonel Lethbridge Stewart.
Oh, Colonel Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart.
Colonel Lethbridge Stewart. And then when we see him again with the second Doctor, he's fighting against the Cybermen. And at that point, he becomes the Brigadier, UNIT, the United Nations Intelligence Task Force that are there to battle aliens that all starts to come into it.
If you look at the Web of Fear, which we mostly can now, there's one bit of it we can't watch properly, but we can watch the rest, and it's very much suddenly a bit more of an action show.
Yeah.
I think you can sort of feel the 1970s sort of action period.
Almost just feels like
Kind of
there's more
coming in.
location work. Which
Yeah,
definitely
they
helps.
go on location and you know they've got sort of soldiers running around and all these kind of things. And it's not quite the first we've got that, but it certainly feels like it's a new type of Doctor Who.
Yeah, the archetype for Doctor Who running around facilities and wastelands and stuff. It kind of starts to get developed here.
Yeah, and a lot more outdoors and not just in the studio. You know, again, it's not. It would be wrong to say it's literally the first time because we have had studio stuff, but it's
becoming more of a part of the program.
the core part of it, exactly.
So let's take a look at some monsters.
Yes,
'Cause
monsters.
The Triton era was like the monster
It's the monster era. It's renowned
Oh,
for
There's
its
some
creatures.
good, there's some good ones.
Oh, amazing. It's my favourite bit. Let's have a look. Okay. That is just a giant crab.
Yeah, that is the Macra.
The macra.
Unfortunately, we can't actually watch this episode because it no longer exists.
Okay.
But I thought it was worth putting in there because really,
It's a big crab, isn't it?
It's massive. I think they were made around the bodies of Mini Coopers. I think was the.
Oh,
the way
this is...
that-
Okay, yeah.
So it is actually a giant prop. They feed on gas. They made a reappearance in David Tennant's time.
Oh, right. Okay.
Only as like a brief sort of cameo.
Yeah, it's I mean they look like crabs still.
Yeah.
Other than that, and they do still feed on gas. And you know, but
I'm sure Twitch is going live with it, but do they have a weak spot you can hit for massive damage? Because that is a big gaming thing. If you've got a giant enemy crab, you need to hit his weak spot for massive damage. How would you defeat one of these guys?
a giant pair of crackers.
That would be
Or a massive boiling pot.
Yeah. Oh, so
it's a Cyberman.
There we are.
yeah. So we're going to see 3 different types of Cybermen here because
really?
at this point in the programme, the Daleks make 2 appearances with the Second Doctor in his first year, right at the start and right at the end. And then at this point, Terry Nation, the creator of the Daleks, says, I don't want them used in Doctor Who anymore because I want to take them off to America and try and get my own Dalek TV series made.
Oh, wow.
And it never happens.
Okay.
So the Cybermen...
Thankfully,
yeah. So the Cybermen step in to sort of take that spot as like the baddie.
After
So
years, really, of the show trying to launch these new, basically with toys in mind, like you've got the Quarks and you've got, the mechanoids and stuff like that, and never really quite takes off. And then the Cybermen come along.
Chumblies, don't forget the
Chumblies.
Chumblies, yeah.
And then the Cybermen come along and they really just kind of blow. They start the archetype for popular monsters that aren't Daleks.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that is why the
just
Cybermen...
kind of Daleks. Go for a robot thing again.
Yeah.
Okay.
So as you can see,
Look
they
at that.
every
I
time
like
they
the,
appear,
the zips there. That's great.
they start to change quite a bit.
I mean, one thing that when they first appeared in William Hartnell's final story, although I really like the look of them, one problem was that they were a little bit fragile and bits kept dropping off, and it was not the most practical.
It's quite a cumbersome costume.
Yeah. I mean, it was so they've kind of streamlined it a bit more in the
What are the handles?
Triton's time.
Seems.
What, their heads?
Yeah. Like, why would you need to be able to?
That's kind of explained in the Capaldi era, isn't it? They are emotional inhibitors, aren't they?
Oh, yes, it is. I forgot that
They're
happens,
not
yeah.
handles. Okay.
They're not handles,
There you
no.
go. That's fine then. And on the front, still like stuff to help them breathe.
Yeah, so, certain aspects of it always remain. There's always some sort of a chest unit, there's always the
tear
handles.
ducts, usually.
The tear ducts occasionally pop back now and again. Oh, so this is
wow.
This is the cyber controller, so he is the big boss.
He
of
looks
the
like the
Cybermen.
Pope of the Cybermen. I like it.
It's a shame that shot's not in colour because there are some colour, but
Yeah.
because that bright orange,
Yeah.
that
Creamy.
And there are
interestingly
lights.
shaped. But because he doesn't have any
Any
Handlebars,
handles?
yeah,
No.
yeah.
He's his own man.
but he's got a big flashing orange
Thing.
top instead. Well, you wouldn't know it was orange, but
No.
Yeah.
And you
You'll have
wouldn't
to
really
take
know
my
it
word for
flashes
that.
either.
And so-
No,
because-
you never really see it in black and
So,
white.
and he's in charge of all the Cybermen. He controls
Yeah,
it.
he's
Cyber
the
controller, yeah.
are we
cyber
supposed to be
controller.
able to sort of see his brain
I
inside?
think that's
you
it,
are
yeah.
supposed to see
It's,
the flashing in there, but it doesn't really come across on camera at all.
Yeah, you can see the veins can't be painted on the top.
If you've seen the David Tennant era thing where Lumic gets
Yeah.
Yeah, John
upgraded
Lumic.
to the cyber controller, he's properly got his brain on show.
Yeah.
Which seems a little bit a vulnerable.
He's a good
Weird,
being, isn't
Anyway,
he?
yeah.
but
like
the
everyone
other
else's-
Cybermen are sort of sensible enough to
armor-plated.
keep it behind a sort of metal casing.
Well,
but
like a gun.
it's,
Yeah.
Here's the thing as well with you see the Cyber Controller again in Attack of the Cybermen in the Sixth Doctor's era, but the brain in that is almost kind of the metal going into organic.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like the Wi-Fi though. If it's in metal, you can't send out.
Yeah, you can't send out
Wi-Fi.
signals. Yeah,
So
yeah.
he's got to have it in like a perspex dome, so you can get better signal. But yeah, he's spooky. I like him.
So let's look at another baddie. Let's see what else we've got.
Ah,
Now, do you know what this is? This is another iconic Doctor Who baddie.
I'm gonna say this is a Lego minifig.
No.
I don't know. It looks like some form of crustacean. I don't know. I'm gonna call it Professor Claw.
Right, that's an ice warrior from the planet
Ice warrior.
Mars.
Okay, from Mars.
Yeah. They're,
Okay.
they're the Martians in Doctor Who.
possibly Professor Claw is as valid a name as
Well,
Ice
yeah,
Warrior.
possibly,
Given that they just decided, call them Ice Warriors.
Ice warriors. What happens if they weren't a warrior though? If they were a poet?
An ice
They'd still
poet.
be- they
That
would-
would be.
okay,
Yeah, I mean, some
okay.
of them would be. I mean, I don't think we meet the ice poets.
No,
Or,
they
or
are
the,
immediately jumping to conclusions, though, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, the
Straight
ones
away.
we meet are fairly show warrior tendencies. So.
But they're all universally chilly.
Yes.
So okay.
Yes, so something you'll encounter a lot with Troughton era stories is the idea of the base under siege story, which really comes into its own in this era, where there are people trapped in a location on their own, there's an encroaching enemy, they've got to either escape or stop the enemy or whatever, and that really comes into its fore with the Troughton stories. And what's really nice about those is, even though, you know, it is known for being a monster era, you still get lots of really nice little character-driven stories or character-driven moments, like in the case of the Ice Warriors, you've got Fusham in The Seeds of Death, who's this kind of cowardly character who kind of redeems himself by the end of the story. So the Base Under Siege and the monsters really kind kind of generally round off the Second Doctor's era.
It gives these stories quite a claustrophobic feel.
Yeah. Which is good for the limitations of the set, you know.
And I think you're right. I mean, obviously the cast tend to get smaller as the stories go on, as people sort
as
the siege continues. Yeah.
And they came back to fight the Second Doctor again. They came back twice in the Pertwee era, and they came back to fight Matt Smith in 2013 in the Cold War, and Peter Capaldi last year.
Persistent threat.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I know these. These are the Wombles.
So these are the Yeti.
Oh, the Yeti.
Underground
They are
and
underground.
overground. They don't womble free. They more kind of
Yeti
claw
free.
people to death. But
So is this the abominable snowman that people have seen?
Well, it's funny you should say that. So they first appear in a story called The Abominable Snowman.
Ah, okay.
But it turns out that these aren't real Yeti.
Oh, so there's these are fake Yeti. There's
there are real
established
Yeti out there.
Sasquatch in
Yeah.
Okay.
But this is a robot that is disguised as a
Okay.
Yeti. It is controlled by something called the Great Intelligence, which is a villain that would come back again during Matt Smith's time.
Sort of controlled through a control sphere. So if the sphere from the Yeti is removed, then it's useless. It
deactivated,
becomes immobile.
But these spheres can move by themselves, and they tend to have a kind of a cluster of spheres that there's a great cliffhanger on the Underground where the Doctor finds the cluster of spheres, and then he hears a beeping of a Yeti nearby and has to crawl onto the Underground right up against the rails, and the hope a train doesn't come past.
Goes like that. That was the sound of it. So that wasn't just me sort of going a bit weird. Well, not just that, but it was it sort of sounds like that, and it's that's how you know a sphere is active.
It's quite sinister, isn't it? You hear that whistling and you sort of, there's this sort of sinister
I get
edge
that
to
with
it.
the cyber sound effects you get for the invasion.
Oh yeah,
I know someone who's got the sound of that as like text message.
Really?
Yeah.
that's great.
Scare the life out of me, especially coming out your phone.
So no, I'm sure it sounds spooky. I'm gonna see it and I'll be spooked.
Robot
Yetis.
Furry robots.
So if you take the sphere out, it does nothing.
it deactivates.
Who made the robots? The sphere made the robots? The
Yeah, so
intelligence made the robots?
I guess the intelligence makes the robots.
Yeah, I mean, it's not entirely clear quite how the intelligence does that.
Seeing as it's
but
formless.
it can change because we see they look slightly different in the Abominable Snowmen. I mean, they become, I think, slightly less cuddly and slightly more ferocious.
More sinister,
that's the more ferocious version there.
Yeah.
Clearly, the intelligence has some way of being able to
Doing
do that. Again, it's quite mysterious.
Another iconic monster, but only it appeared during the Second Doctor's era. But it's sort of a well-remembered one.
And the
Five Doctors, you see a
briefly. But I mean, I think because they're such good stories, I mean, that's why they kind of endured. People, remember the one with the Yeti.
But it's only because they're two of the famous missing ones. But again, they still endured despite that.
So people get to see this, or is this missing?
So this one has recently been found. It was found in 2013.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Wow, amazing. We get to watch this now. So thank you for watching us. Enjoy this Second Doctor. We'll see you next time when we talk about the Third Doctor. Who's the Third Doctor going to be?
John Pertwee. A very dapper-looking gent in a frilly shirt, velvet, and a cape.
I'm sold already. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.